Welcome to a very special evening on Abundance Coaching TV. It's a special evening because we have a very special guest tonight. Hi, my name is Steve and I'll be your host tonight. You might be wondering, why is there a different host? Well, the reason is because Scott, who would normally be right here, is our special guest. I'll be interviewing him in a few moments. The topic for this evening is, who am I? Not so much, who am I, Steve, but who am I for whoever's speaking? Who is Scott? Who are you? It's a really important question at some points in our lives. When I ask myself, who am I might come up with some answers like, well, I'm a man. That's pretty obvious. My mom and dad, through their actions, created me, but they weren't completely aware of the process, were they? So there's a lot more to us than meets the eye. And then there's all of the persona aspects of ourselves, of our individuality, our history, our life story. So for example, I could tell you that I was born onto this earth in Ontario, Canada. I grew up in Nova Scotia. I went to college back in Ontario again. I joined the Canadian Navy and spent time on the west coast of Canada. And all of these things help to give us a story which can help us in a way because it can give us experience. We can think back at it, the strengths that we had and so on. All of these things they can be important. So often we forget about who we are. And sometimes we have to remind ourselves or continue to seek and find out who we really are. Now, we can't forget, of course, our guest this evening, the guy who originated this show, Scott Epp. He will be sharing about who he is. And it would be a good idea for us to listen to Scott because he's got a lot of experience in this. Because maybe some of what he shares we can relate to ourselves and we can learn something about ourselves. At this point, I would like to welcome Scott Epp to the show. Welcome, Scott.
Woohoo! Hey, buddy. Good to see you,
Good to see you, Scott.
That's awesome.
Right
cool.
on.
Very cool. Sweet. So, yeah. Great.
So how does it feel to be on your show, Scott?
I don't know, man. It's surreal a little bit, you know. Just it's been almost a year, I guess, 6 months actually, since we started this thing, and it's kind of neat. I'm in this chair, and I don't have any notes, and I don't even know what you're gonna ask me. So that part's kind of the surreal part.
That's great. And you know what, Scott? I found out something about you today, and I want to share this with the audience.
Okay.
I found out that it's Scott's birthday today.
All right.
Let's give a round of applause for Scott here. And I got you a couple little things, Scott.
Oh, man.
I want you to give a puff on this for your birthday, and I'll puff with you, man.
All right. Woohoo!
Happy birthday, Scott. And I also got for you
Thanks, buddy.
a happy birthday
Oh,
hat that you
there
can
we
wear.
go. Woohoo! Cool. All right.
Does it fit? It fits on there.
It's the
Check
cone
out
head,
this
eh?
man. Yeah.
It's like a keepa. It's protecting my bald spot.
Right on. It is. It is. You no longer
there
have
we
a
go.
bald spot, you see?
Yeah.
There's always a benefit here.
Yeah, that's right.
And also, I've realized that Scott does a lot of traveling. He goes all around the world. He goes down under. He goes across North America. I know that because one time I called him and he answered his phone in San Diego airport.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he's from this area and he knows there's a certain type of thing that he'll never forget about when he travels. I want to give you a birthday gift here tonight, Scott. It is something from here in Saskatoon. It's Saskatoon Berry Jam.
All right.
Scott,
hey,
you can share that with
buddy.
your family and you can bring that anywhere you go and you
Right
can say you bring a
on.
piece of Saskatchewan with you.
Thank you,
And
man.
Saskatoon with you for that matter.
That's right. That's awesome, man. Sweet. Thank you.
Right on.
My favorite pie is Saskatoon berry pie. So it's a little inside.
You make some pie
Thing
out of
for
it,
me.
maybe.
Yeah, you
no,
bet,
I don't,
man.
I've never made any pie, but maybe it
Cool.
works for pie. I'm not sure.
Hey, thanks a lot. That's great.
Now, This evening, there's something very intriguing to share. And Scott's going to share some of that with us. It's this idea of who am I? And there's a lot, he shares a lot on this fabulous network. It's a lot about learning about ourselves. So what's more important than who am I? But first of all, a little bit about Scott. For those of you who might have just been tuning in for the first time, you're going, who is this Scott guy anyways? Well, let me share a little bit about him. First of all, Scott is a certified professional coach. That's what he does most of the time. He's a motivational speaker, and he's owner of a company called Abundance Coaching. He has many successes through sharing and helping people to discover their amazing selves so that they can live with abundance in their lives. He does this through using exciting games, motivational techniques, and these all result in life-changing effects on those who follow along the lines of what Scott is teaching. He has credentials too. He's the graduate of a 2-year program from Australia called the International Coach Academy. He is a Toastmaster and a professional speaker, and he is certified with global priorities as a values trainer. He grew up in what I would like to call the middle of nowhere, Laird, Saskatchewan, but no hard feelings for those of you who are from Laird.
No.
He is one of 8 children, can you believe it? He's the eldest. And his determination and positive work ethic have enabled him to develop a very productive holding company here in Saskatchewan and a vibrant coaching business. He has been a top producer in technology sales in both Saskatoon and Toronto, and he is happily married to his sensational wife, Nicole, who he has 2 children with.
You bet. Yeah.
Wow,
That's awesome.
What an amazing guy Scott is. He's got so much to share, and I would like to ask Scott a couple of questions here.
Sure.
Because after all, we're talking about who am I? Well, let's find out a little bit about the man behind what's being produced here, Scott Epp. Scott, if I was to ask you a couple of questions along the lines of who you are, what would you say? I'll take a little step back for a minute here. You talk a lot about this idea of authentic self.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Now, when you think in terms of who you are in reference to your authentic self, what comes to mind?
Well, great question. Really, I think what comes to mind for me is that everybody wants to be genuine. Everybody wants to think that there's no facade in their life. And when they play that facade, as much as they want to fake it, they come to a head of realizing, okay, well, this isn't genuine. So what I want people to do is also feel that they can be genuine and comfortable with being genuine. Because there's lots of good reasons for people to put that facade on to be quote unquote fake, or to try to impress people because they've been hurt in the past, right? So everybody's been hurt. You've been hurt, I've been hurt, you've been hurt, everybody's been hurt. And because of that, we come up with these ideas that we're not enough somehow. And that what we will do in the future won't be enough. And what I love to do with my coaching and just with who I am is just try to be transparent, try to be real with the situations, because life isn't always easy. And most people know me as an optimistic person, and that's totally true. I'm very positive, very optimistic. I definitely see the brighter side in almost anything. Or if I do get knocked down, I get back up really fast. But when it comes to authenticity, I think that really people want that. People want to live authentic lives, and they want to be happy with who they are in the process.
And Scott, just sharing with you, anybody who's known Scott, and I've known you for a while, Scott,
yeah.
And you are authentic because you show up every time with the same hat on, so to speak, this positive hat every time. It's pretty hard to fake that consistently. I mean, you're authentic, and you're upbeat, and you help to elevate the attitude of other people.
Hey, thanks, man.
That's for sure. That's what I would say. And everybody has a life story,
Sure.
and you have a life story. And how do you feel that your life story helps to develop your authentic self, or helps you to stay into your authentic self?
Oh, that's a great question too. Really, you're right. Everybody does have a story. Everybody has a background. Everybody has history, and you may not think that your story is that valuable. And it is. No question about it. Everybody has an important story, and usually it's riddled with pits, and it's riddled with strife and trouble, but it's also got moments of joy and happiness. In the midst of any turmoil, there is something to look forward to. And in my story, I can tell you that it hasn't always been pretty. So where I am today isn't just a result of me just waking up and saying, hey, I'm positive today, everything's going to be great. But it definitely is a result of me practicing the success principles that will help me just be my best self on a day-to-day basis. Wake up and be my best self. Because my job and my design, who I'm created to be, is to give back and make a difference in people's lives. And I can't do that unless I'm, first of all, feeding and just sowing into myself. So definitely, like when it comes to your story matters. Your story is so important, and everybody's story is so important. And I often utilize pieces of my story and my background, even the pit part, with being genuine and authentic. I think you need to also just be real with, where you have fallen and when you've done things that are stupid, or, things that even, people will be like, wow, you did that. Okay. Well, it drops their guard down, because it's like, okay, well, I can get this guy because he's done something, and he's opening up about it, so I can open up too.
Yeah. And I heard you mention one time that you've had your challenges in life, you've been knocked down.
Yeah.
And that is actually, you can see that now. Do you see that now as actually helping you in your authenticity now?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Because things haven't always gone right for me, it totally helps me to share from a totally enlightened point of view, I think. And also just to relate with people. I could share probably 20 stories right now even with you that would help, I guess, you as the audience really drop your guard. But it hasn't all been easy. And I think that where we're going with this conversation is that you'll probably want to know some of those stories. And I'm totally free and open to sharing, the things that haven't all gone right. Because I've tried things, and I've had the financial issues. I've had the issues where I didn't think that I was good enough, or that I would doubt. Even doing this TV show, if you really think about it, it's like, this isn't that easy. Like, I'm comfortable in my skin doing this thing, but leading up to producing the first episodes, it was just like, are people even going to watch? Like, who's really interested? A few thousand people I have in my networks is that enough to even start? Shouldn't I have like 20,000 people that are eager to watch this, to pilot something even? All those doubts come in, right? And Adam, our AV guy, he can attest, our very first episode bombed in the technical side. Like, we still got it off. It was late, and it was not very good quality as far as the video stuff, and we had about 20 errors that happened all at once, it seemed. But I guess the push through, like you said, like being authentic and pushing through, we said, okay, well, we're going to do episode 2 now. And then what I did was I set it up so that I had guests on episode 3, 4, and 5. And then I had this, what I thought, really big guest. And I was really excited about the first guest in the new year. And his name is John Arnott. So you can watch episode 201. And I knew all along that he was going to be on the first episode of the new year. So I had to do it. So I pushed myself to, get through it. And that definitely helped with me being authentic and real with you right now.
Right.
Yeah.
So your challenges have been almost your greatest blessings in a way.
Yeah.
Because they've helped you to grow on. Because for that example, if you didn't have the technical issues and the challenges, you might not have booked all those great interviewers.
That's true. Yeah, and some of the people that are coming up, I'm so excited about doing it. And Steve, I think that really what that helped me do was identify that I really was in my sweet spot doing interviews, and I was really in my sweet spot just bringing awareness to things and topics that were about making a difference to people. And now we're starting to see thousands of people watch our show. So it's like, oh, okay, well, the doors are starting to open and different guests are getting interested. And so it would never have happened to the point of even discovering this my sweet spot if I didn't push through. And it wouldn't be making, I've gotten emails from people that, you know, it's made a big difference. Like, that stuff is priceless, really. Yeah.
Wow. And you also talk a lot about abundance.
Yeah.
Because that's the name of your company, actually, abundance versus scarcity.
Yeah.
And while we're on this topic of authentic self, because that's so important when we're talking about who am I, isn't it?
Yeah.
Authentic self. If we don't know what's authentic, we don't even know who we are, do we?
Yeah, it's true.
Now, do you think it's possible for somebody to live in a scarcity mindset and actually be aware of their authentic self? Are those congruent? Or is it easier in the abundance
That's a good
mindset?
question. Well, the obvious answer is that it's definitely easier. But to go to the first part of your question, is it possible for somebody to live in their authentic self while having a scarcity mindset? I would say it'd be very difficult. I don't think that it would be impossible. But the problem with having a scarcity mindset is that you're always thinking that there's not enough to go around. You're always thinking that if this is the piece of pie, like the pie, and if there's one piece that's taken out of the pie, that piece could never be replaced, or there can never be more. So you all of a sudden just like, oh, one piece is gone. I only have this much left. I better just make sure nobody finds out that I have the rest of the pie. Otherwise, I won't have anything. And with that type of attitude, it's hard to really just live in your authentic, amazing self and really just like flourish. When you live in the abundance mindset, Steve, what you really do is you do the opposite of scarcity. Because scarcity is a lack mentality. It's a thinking that says, hey, I don't have enough and I won't have enough. But abundance is essentially, my definition on abundance is believing that you've been created as more than enough, you have more than enough, and that more than enough is coming to you in the future. And when you look at those three individual components, break it down. You were created as more than enough. God created you not as junk. He created you as somebody wonderful. You were a miracle when you were born. So today's my birthday, so I was fortunate enough to have a number of people say, hey, happy birthday. One of the people said, hey, you know, happy birthday on the miracle of your birth. And I thought, you know, that was a special comment. It wasn't just a happy birthday. It was on the miracle of your birth. And I thought about it, and I was like, yeah, you know, it's totally a miracle. I was a miracle when I was born. Completely. And I know that I was a miracle. I know that my parents were so blessed to have me when I was born. But moreover, God created me as a miracle. God created me special. He also created me with unique talents and gifts that nobody else would have. And He knew that I would be formed. And He knew that I'd have different experiences that would shape me. But He also intentionally gave me the amount of hairs that I have in my head. He intentionally gave me the look that I have. He intentionally gave me my voice. He intentionally gave me my desires, passions, and dreams before I was even born. So I was created as more than enough to Him. The second part is that today I'm more than enough. And really, when you believe that today, in the present, in the now, you're more than enough, you can simply use that to help you get over whatever momentary strife or problem you're going through. Because really that's what it is. Whatever's going on today, it's a momentary issue, it's a momentary problem, because really here's our life, it's a blink. Okay? But today, you have more than enough, and you believe that, and it's just like, okay, whatever's happening, there's possibilities. And whatever challenges I have, if I'm blinded, I can open up the blinders, and I can see things from a different perspective. You start seeing opportunities when problems come. And it's just like that whole thing that I often talk about with Rocky. You know, you take the hits and you get knocked down to the ground, right? But those hits, you could call them obstacles, but really they are opportunities somewhat disguised. So when you take the hits, it's just like, okay, I'm sure not going to walk into that punch again. I'm sure not going to do that. I'm going to still stay in the ring, but I'm going to fight a little bit different. Or you're going to adjust or do things differently. And I love the last part, Steve, is that more than enough's coming to you in the future. And that's really just, that's the height of abundance thinking. That's the height of the abundance mindset. It's being able to have vision, to see yourself not for who you are and what you're doing today, but who you are, what you are, and what you're going to do tomorrow. And it's projecting your eyes and seeing the future, seeing who you can be, seeing what you can do, seeing the talents that you have right now, not as limitations, but as talents that are being refined and talents that are being grown. Because that's what you do. You grow. You grow in your skills, you grow in your experience, you grow in your thinking. And as you look at yourself in the future, you see what you have, you see the possibilities.
Well, I'm glad you shared that so eloquently, because you're really sharing a lot about who you are.
Yeah, sure.
This is core foundation to you.
Yeah.
And abundance, I'm glad you shared it. Abundance, more than enough abundance, has to do with everything in your life.
It does, yeah.
It's not just your finances or whatever it is. It's everything in your life. It has to do with your talents, your very existence.
Yeah.
You were created as more than enough already.
Totally.
That is amazing. That's you've shared so much about who you are there.
Yeah, totally.
Almost much more than where you grew up and all this sort of thing, because that's a story that can lead to where you are.
Yeah.
But you've shared about who you are in terms of your core value, pretty much, which really tells a lot about.
It's definitely.
It's
definitely.
Well, something else I wanted to ask you here, Scott, is, and I think that I was going to ask you, who is the authentic Scott Epp? But I think you've answered that, unless there was something else you wanted to say to that.
Well, really, I could add this. When we dig deep and we figure out who we are, and this is my coach coming in, so I'm really trying hard to be the guest and just answer your questions. I'm used to just being the coach in these things, but to reflect something back on the audience, that's one of the most important questions you can ask yourself. So the newsletter that I sent out today, when I was announcing that I was going to show this episode, I said, who are you? Like deep down, really, who are you? It's like, okay, well, who are you is kind of, it can be like a rhetorical question. But it's just like deep down, who are you? Like when you peel off all those layers, like authentically, who are you and what do you stand for? And for me, like I'm a father, I'm a lover, I am an absolute, I'm absolutely blessed to be married to the woman that I'm married to. I am a disciple of Jesus Christ. I am someone who completely believes in people, that I love people and I cherish just getting to know people, and relationships are huge to me. I'm an influencer. I feel that my calling is to influence people, not to influence in the negative connotation, but to influence for the good of their possibility, for the good of what they can do, to help them be their best self. And I'm all about inspiration. I'm very inspirationally minded. And when I talk about inspiration, it has to come from that authentic place too, to show that. I'm about producing. Producing's huge for me. That's why financial independence is one of my core values. And when you talk about producing, it's like I'm looking at ways to create more abundance financially, sure, but create more abundance in other people. So I create a lot of products. I love creating. We'll talk about it later. There's a product that I created this afternoon for the guests that are watching the show. And I love pouring myself into things. So I'm very passionate with that too. So that's really who I am at the core. Just all of those things, I guess, and in essence make up who I am.
And we've talked a lot about you, and that's really important because we get a sense of where you're coming from through all of this.
Yeah.
But real quickly, what would you suggest to the audience here in terms of, because everybody's got a story, as we just mentioned.
Sure.
What would you suggest to anybody who's looking at their life story in terms of helping them to use that story to help them to answer that question, who am I?
Ah. If you don't ever answer that question, you might feel lost all your days. Or there's going to be a day that you're really going to get hammered with that. Because life is about finding that answer. And if you're on a discovery path, that's great. But I challenge you to start thinking about it first of all. It's like when we push that thought away, or we push the idea of just like really getting to know ourselves, that's where problems really could happen. So one very good tangible way of doing that is really through coaching. And not to make this about really coaching, but coaching really helps you see yourself from a different angle and help you identify really those areas of your life that you may not see because you are you. You're too attached to you, right? It's hard for you to step outside your body and look at yourself and identify yourself and figure out who you are, right?
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of personality tests. The 7 life languages is my favorite personality test. 7lifelanguages.com. You'll find it on the internet. I'm a big fan of people figuring out what their core values are. So you know that. We've talked about that personally. When you figure out what your core values are, you figure out what matters to you. And really it helps you identify what drives you and what motivates you and what gets you going. Core values are so important because they help you make the best decisions that are authentic to you.
Well, along that line, what is that motivates you? I mean, you are a life coach.
Yeah.
What is it behind the coaching that gets you up in the morning? You do the work as a coach.
Yeah.
But what about it in your private life? What does that coaching do for you, and what is it, and why are you motivated to do it?
Yeah. I think that all comes down to my vision statement. And you know what my vision statement is because I've told you it, but I'll share that with you, and I say it quite often, is I am here, my purpose in life is to connect people with their authentic, amazing self. All of that so that they can have passion and abundance. And when you live in passion, these are the results, right? All of the first part is this is what you got to do, and this is part of the process. But the results is passion, right? I think that for me, I get up and I'm motivated with passion personally. I'm passionate in my relationships. I'm passionate with my love for my wife, my family, my friends. People that you could interview that would know me, that you wouldn't know, that one of the things I'm sure they'd say is that Scott's very passionate. And it's true. Because when you put yourself into something, it's just like, hey, I'm not just stepping in, I'm all in when I'm in, right? So that's part of me living it, but then I love to show people that they can do things. I love it when somebody comes to me and they're like, I don't know how to do this, or I don't think I can do this, or I have these problems. It's like, yeah, but you don't know the problems I've gone through, Scott, or things like that happen. And when it's even like, hey, how do I monetize what I'm passionate about? Those questions too. It's like, I love getting in those conversations because when people catch it and they're like, hey, I can do it. I can live with passion and I can figure out, how to monetize it as I go. It's like, there's like such a sigh of relief because you were born to live with passion. Don't you think?
Yeah. I mean, we live on a higher level.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're living from what? We're living just to eat and to sleep and so on.
Yeah,
we live with passion.
Yeah, exactly.
We elevate ourselves and we have enthusiasm to live. Life takes on a greater flavor, right?
Oh, totally, totally. Like, there's so many country songs. I was just listening to another one. It's like merry-go-round or something. It's like she's like round and round and round she goes. Where it stops, no one knows. It's like she just keeps on going around. It's like, man, is that a story of somebody's life? And she just like going around on a merry-go-round. It's like, that's the premise of it. Maybe if you like country music, it's a big hit right now. And it's like, oh, well, that's actually a picture. It's probably #1 hit right now because it's a picture of what people identify with. That's what those like sob country songs, like they make it on the top, is because people get it. It's like, hey, that's my life. He's like, so I can just like console in the fact that this person's singing about me. It's like, well, okay. What about It's a Beautiful Day? Like, that's my life. It's like, It is. It's a beautiful day. You know, don't let it get away, right? So when you live
Comes
in,
down to choice, right?
it does.
Yeah.
So you can wake up and just like, hey, it's a beautiful day. It's like, yeah, but it's blizzarding outside. No, it's a beautiful day, man.
Snowbirds are flying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. It's like, hey, well, we're inside. Okay, let's dream. Let's dream. Dream about life. So, yeah.
That's so sweet. Yeah, you're very passionate, Scott. And another thing I noticed you're passionate about sometimes is the idea of leadership.
Yeah.
You talked about growing up on the farm, and you learned a lot of life lessons
Yeah.
from that early experience of life.
Yeah.
What did you learn about leadership from that whole growth of the rural life?
Oh, thanks for asking about that. For those of you that grew up on the farm, you know what it's like probably, and I'll identify with you. And for those that don't know what it's like growing up on the farm, it's a totally different lifestyle than the urban life. Very typically, I was taken out of school so I could go drive grain truck or go drive the swather or combine if it was harvest time. And it was about going to the fields in the evening and picking up rocks during the summertime when the fields were full of rocks and throwing them off the field. And it was about that hard work ethic. And I think that really a lot of leadership boils down to work ethic and developing that. And I didn't have a choice. So I thank my parents for that, actually. I think that was great. And sure, I was a kid and I resisted it sometimes because I think every kid does. But for a lot of my life, I remember just doing it and accepting that, hey, this is good. I'm just going for it. And I think that leadership path came from the farm with work ethic. That was the number one value that I learned from it. And then that work ethic brought me to a Bible school where I went, and I learned about spirituality more. And that I took a piece of that was probably the biggest thing I took from Bible school. And then I went to the workforce in Saskatoon, and working the workforce, you know, I think that I understood more about business and how that operated. And I even got fired from a job which was all about me slacking off and not showing up to work on time and actually missing a shift. So I learned about discipline and the value of timeliness and all that stuff. And then as I developed myself, I found myself in a sales position, and I really rocked that position and really identified what I was about. Like I loved the sales side of things. I worked at a computer store called Computer Trends, and I loved the sales side of things. And actually, because of my drive with that, I became quite successful. And I started dreaming and thinking about the possibilities then to grow and go further with that. And as far as monetizing, I just didn't feel the need, Steve, to continue to just live off of rent, you know, just like that default line that we were talking about before. So when I was about 20 years old, I made a decision that I was going to buy a house. I was going to rent houses. I was going to buy multiple houses. And I started dreaming, and I started writing these dreams on paper when I was 20 years old. And I remember in fall of the year 2000, I had a dream. And that dream was to buy a house and to get multiple renters in that house. And I'd been saving up for this. And I have to say that I also partied at that same time. And
partied?
I was a total partier. I would have hot tub parties and 50 people would show up at our place, 50, 100 people sometimes.
See, now we're learning a little bit more about Scott here, you know?
Oh yeah, we drank lots of beer too.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And it was my lifestyle. Like I was the heart of my, like one of my things that I would do is I would have like 5 groups of friends, and then I would just like invite everybody to a big party. So I wouldn't, you know, I would kill all the birds at one stone. It's just like, hey, all my friends are together in one place. Sweet. And then everybody would make friends from there. And then actually a bunch of people got married from there because they all met up through the different things. But yeah, totally, I was into partying. But I remember one time I was going to go out to the bar with some friends and do what I did every single weekend, which is get drunk at the bar or just drink, party, whatever. And this gentleman by the name of Milton Eby gave me a phone call. And talk about moments that change your life. that phone call was a moment for me. Because all he did was he said, Scott, you know, it's like, hey, I'm taking a drive out in Saskatoon. I'm going to drive around. And I was wondering if you just would want to hang out with me for the evening. I'll show you some of my places, show you, you know, what it's like out there. And I didn't know Milton that well, but he knew my dad quite well. And I knew that he was a realtor. And I said, yes, I will. And I blew my plans off with my friends just like that. And spontaneously, I just decided, and I went with him, and I started to dream bigger. And I captured that dream in that fall. It's so much so that I made some decisions about partying. I made some decisions about where I was going to go. I started to really focus on what it would take to buy that first house. I bought that first house just before the new year of 2001, so still in 2000, I bought my first house. And I didn't have any money to do anything but renovate that house, and all the bills were going to come due January 1st. And I persevered, pushed through, painted the place, got it renovated, and found all my tenants so that I would be able to cover all my bills, because I didn't have enough money to cover any of my bills by February 1st. And I did it. And that was like a sigh of relief, because it was just like everything was coming in. It's like I can't even make my first mortgage payment if I don't have these renters. So I did it. And it spun, man. It spun into 2 years later, I bought another house. 2 years later, I bought 3 more. I had 6 houses, 26 renters, something like that, all at once. And it was about pushing through and perseverance. I still worked a job, so I took all that I learned through those things and used leadership, I guess, throughout all of that. So.
And
man,
you learned something about yourself.
I learned tons
You learned something
about
about
myself.
who you were, right? You learned that what you dreamed about was possible.
Yeah, totally. I learned tons about myself. And Steve, like, I'd love to share, like, and also with you, the audience, like, it wasn't always easy. Like, renting houses, and I had like 5 renters in a house in a shared accommodation, and I was trying to navigate all of these renters, and people would move in and out and party, and lots of like different things would go on in the houses, as you might imagine. Some people from university and things would come in and out. And I managed it, and I made it profitable, and I wasn't always the good, nice landlord. I had to evict some people. But I learned about all of those things when I was 20, 21, 22, 23. And I'm bringing those skills and that mindset in with me as I'm growing further in leadership. And I think that where you were going with leadership, I know this is a long way of getting there, but was that those developed in me the idea of how to lead. And it showed me how to lead in a household. It showed me how to lead in a business, and then it showed me the qualities that it would take to start leading other things. So I started coaching a slow pitch team, and I coached that slow pitch team to 4 championships, and it ended up being the most competitive league in the slow pitch league here in Saskatoon. And I started coaching a college and career age group. So I really just was the pastor in a church for college and career age kids, and that was part of my passion, and I did it, and I didn't know what to do, and I didn't have anybody else there with me, but because I stepped in, I started leading there. And I also led a cell group, and I didn't know how to do that either, but because you just step in, you learn how to do that, and then you prepare and you develop, and I think that the relational skills were a big part of it as it grew. And that grew further and further and further. So I had all these leadership things as part of me. As
they all built upon each other.
They did, yeah.
And from what I heard too, with your first example of the houses, you weren't leading anybody but yourself.
Yeah.
You were the one who had to be led, and you had to find that within you, right? Mm-hmm. Later on, you were able to apply what you were able to lead within yourself to the slow pitch people, to the ministry, and these other aspects of your life. But if you didn't learn how to lead yourself, you wouldn't be able to lead anybody, right?
Oh, so true. So true. And honestly, a big part of it too, I have to credit Amway. Was a big, big part of it. Because my parents were in Amway through my high school years and through the first years of me being out on my own. And actually all the way into like my junior years, they were in Amway. So I went to a lot of conferences. So I have to say that you can really just try to do some of the things on your own, but you need to have the positive mental attitude built up in you no matter what you do. And it's a big deal. So I listened to lots of tapes. I programmed the junk out of my mind with positive stuff, positive psychology. And even when I was like 15, 16, 17 years old. So it was always in there. And I think that that's why I got a job that I was totally not qualified for when I got my first computer job, is because I blew the socks off my interview when I had the interview. Even though I was never in sales and I wouldn't have qualified on paper for this job, the manager at the time saw who I was and saw potential in me, mostly probably because of Amway and because of what I learned and how I believed in myself. I didn't have like that many limitations to what I believed I could do. And that part was huge too.
Now, you obviously grew up on a farm, and
I did.
you could have been a successful farmer.
Maybe. I say maybe because farming's different, hey?
Yeah.
And
But you chose different
yeah,
routes. It's like
I
you had
did.
roots there, but you
I
grew. You grew, and at one point you told me that you ended up in Toronto at a certain point in your life.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about what happened there?
Yeah, thanks for asking about that. Well, that's one of my favorite parts of my story, is living in Toronto. And you might be thinking, oh wow, the big huge city.
The Big Smoke.
Yeah.
T.O.
I loved it. I thought it was great.
Yeah.
And I loved it, but it was still very difficult at the same time. It was very challenging for me. So the story there is that I was living at my home and always longing to be married to the right person. And I had girlfriends and they broke up with me and and that whole thing. And I was 20.
They broke up with you?
Yeah. I don't have the privilege of saying that I ever broke up with anybody.
Yeah.
That I just was broke up with, which is a godsend because they weren't the right ones. But I was 28 years old. There's another story of like bouncing back, eh? It's like I'm 5 for 6 with girls breaking up with me. So, and I'm never gonna be, anything other than that, because me and my wife are totally committed. Steve, I went to Toronto for a wedding, and at this wedding was Blake. He was one of my best friends when he lived in Saskatoon, and he wanted me to be one of his groomsmen. And I was ecstatic. I was like really stoked about that. So here I could be Blake's groomsman, and I flew out to Toronto, and I met this girl at this location, at this wedding. And of course I was one of the groomsmen, so I had to be all polished and stuff. And I remember walking down the long walkway. It was outdoors, and I noticed her. There's 2 empty rows, and then here this woman that was beautiful just was sitting right there. And I noticed her as I was walking down. And then as everybody else came and everybody lined up and the officiator started his thing, I was like snapped to it. You know, you have to stand a certain way. And the short version is that when we came back to sit down, I ended up sitting down right in front of her. And at the time, you would have thought that this is a great pickup line, but I was ignorant to that fact. I realized how good a pickup line it was later. I had a tiny little pocket camera, like a digital camera, and this is 2006, so they weren't as sophisticated as they are now. And I looked behind me, and I said, "Hi, would you mind taking a picture of me when I'm back up with everybody?" Because I didn't know anybody at this wedding except for the groom. And she said, "Oh, yeah, sure." And I had to tell her how to use the camera, and then I said, "Hey, I'm Scott." And she said, "Hey, I'm Nicole." I was like, "Okay, cool." So, and then we're singing. So we sang, and then of course later on we had to go back up. Oh, there was a pull. There was definitely a pull. There was a heartstring going on. No question for me, right?
Yeah.
And she said it later on that was for her. When we went back up there, apparently her friend had to nudge us like, "You're supposed to take pictures." "Oh, yeah. She took pictures, but she was shaking. And none of those pictures turned out. Which didn't matter because she had the camera. She had to go find me later. So
Right,
that's where it was a
right,
perfect pickup
right,
line.
Right, you left something there.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, you
Yeah.
left something
So
in
the point
deal.
is,
Yeah.
always leave something behind. If you want a girl, just like leave her something behind
Yeah.
to go and help find you. But there was definitely a spark, and through the reception and all of that stuff, it could have turned out a lot different, Steve, in the way that she was set to go to a different wedding and meet a different guy who she'd met once but didn't know, but a friend of hers was trying to set her up because she hadn't had a date, and she was like a prize at the church where she was going. Like, that's what I think. And she was supposed to go to a different wedding. So she was supposed to go to the reception here, and then in time for the dance, she was supposed to leave, go to this other wedding, and meet this other guy. Well, she kind of liked me. And I didn't know that fully, but I knew that there was something going on connection-wise. And I ended up standing and freaking out. You'd think, okay, well, this story's going good. He's just going to ask her to dance. It's all going to be a happy ending. But I freaked right out. I was like, this girl is from Australia. I'm from Saskatoon. She lives in Toronto. This is nuts. I'm supposed to marry a farm girl. I'm supposed to be
She's
back
not a
in
farm girl?
Saskatoon. No.
No.
She's from Sydney, Australia. She's far from farm girl.
Yeah.
And I just, like, I was calm, but then I just like, and then when I got freaked out, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to have to decide whether or not I'm going to ask her to dance or do something more about this pull that I felt. And ended up being that we're blessed by having a few of her friends, one in particular, Kevin Alfred. And Kevin came up to me while we were at the reception, and he found out from Nicole that she had feelings, or she liked me. And he's like, I'm going to go find out who this guy is. So Kevin went up, and he was scouting. It's like, who's this Scott guy? And he just was, he asked me great questions. He was just like, yeah, so what do you think about Nicole? And I just dumped on him. I was like, I'm from Saskatoon, she's from here. And he's like, well, what do you think about her church? Because it's more of a charismatic church. I was like, well, that part's great. Like, I believe in the Holy Spirit working and things like that. So that part didn't bug me. And then I guess he just sussed me out and he liked me. So that's good. So he went and reported back to Nicole. He's a really good guy. And Nicole was supposed to be gone by this time. And I guess she made a decision. She's like, well, I don't think I'm going to go. But if he doesn't ask me out, I'm going to have to do something, or I'm going to have to leave. Or ask me to dance at least. And I remember there was a moment when she was sort of in the area and there was a mingling of many people, where I was just, whatever was being talked about. Have you ever been in a space, Steve, where it's just whatever's being talked about, you have, you don't care. You're just thinking about one thing. You been there?
You're in the zone. You're in the zone of that thing, yeah.
But I couldn't even comprehend anything else because I was nervous with that pit feeling. It's like, are you going to ask her to dance, or are you going to do something, or are you going to do, it's like, how do you do it? And then this is what she, the song came on, the DJ played the song, will you save the next dance for me? And it was playing, it was almost done. And then the lyric came on, and I said, so you're going to save a dance for me? I said that to Nicole. And then she said to me, she said, well, I don't know. I'm actually not going to be staying here all that long. I have another wedding to go to. And right then, that moment was another one of those moments where it's like seizing your divine moment. And remember I said about Milton, that was one moment in my life too. That moment right then, when she said that, that was like a defining moment. Would have shaped my whole future. Whatever I decided to do, however I acted in that moment would have shaped my future. Because if I would have stepped back and been like, oh, okay, all right, just like let's talk, or just something casual and not make a bold move, then she might have just thought, okay, well, this is just like another real nice guy. And maybe she'd have hung around and maybe she would have gone. Or if I wouldn't have done anything, she would have just gone to the other wedding, and who knows what would happen then.
In the meantime, you would have been falling in love.
Yeah.
You know that Zac Brown band?
Yeah, totally.
Falling in love when she's walking away.
Yeah.
And this happens to so many people, not just about love, but opportunities in life.
Yeah.
We feel it. And yet there's something inside us that prevents us. It's usually fear.
Yeah.
That holds us back, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So how were you able to overcome that? Was it all of your life experiences that you just made a decision, I'm going to live my life this moment?
I think it was just determination. I was like, there's no way that I'm going to let her go to another wedding. It's like, and I just said to her, I says, no, we're going to go for a dance. And then she said, okay, all right.
So that was your real self. That was the who am I coming out again, right? Coming out
Yes.
in spots.
Yeah.
We've learned a lot about Scott, haven't we? And he's given us a lot of his story, but he's also infused it with all kinds of ideas that can help us. And that's what Scott tends to do. It's his nature as a coach, is to help us with ideas to bring out of ourselves what we are best to bring out in that moment in relation to what we're working on. So I want to ask Scott a final question to kind of top off what you were talking about in terms of your life and your whole passion and all this sort of thing. And we started out talking about who am I?
Yeah.
And who am I is very important, because
Yeah.
if we don't know who we are, where can we begin?
Yeah.
But also, I think wouldn't you agree that it's also important to ask the question, where am I? Because, for example, in AA, it's a very successful Alcoholics Anonymous. A lot of people have heard of it. The question is the admission of where we are. Because if we don't know where we are, how can we go anywhere?
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you, Scott, where are you in your life? You know, you got a sense of who you are, but where are you in your life in terms of your coaching, your family, and all of that, in terms of where your heart is?
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure, definitely. Well, I'm at a place of really just being free and open to help. I think that I'm in a place of just having broad shoulders to help. And part of that is just because of everything that I shared at the beginning, is just building yourself up and finding ways to keep that cup full, finding ways to really just be successful at keeping that cup full. Because you and I both know that with an empty cup, you have nothing to give anybody else. So where I am is I'm at a place of appreciating life with a full cup that, you know, certainly does drain, but I have found a source to be able to replenish that cup when it does get drained. And out of that source, that's how I coach. It's out of that cup that keeps on getting more that I'm able to give more. And what you would experience, I guess, out of coaching is that there would be that source. You would feel that source. It's just like that. It's not just another friendship conversation where it's two-way or it's all about me or my ideas. Like, hey, I'm coming from a place of offering and giving. And of course, using the coaching tools, which are very valuable. The stuff that you learn in the coaching programs and schools are very valuable. But in the coaching schools, you don't learn necessarily how to be your best self, or else the strategies to not have that stress come in and things like that. I think that really is the inward strength that you figure out. So I'm at a place of just having overflow and having that replenishing cup to be able to give to others. So that's my heart.
And some of you, probably none of you are aware that I've actually done some coaching sessions with Scott. And I would have to say that even though Scott is a professional, that is what he does on a day-to-day basis, he approaches it in a relationship that almost feels like a friend. And he has this overflow of giving. Like I say, every time he shows up, it's with the same, Scott, you're with the same attitude, this attitude of plenty, this attitude of abundance.
Yeah.
And in my case, when I talked to Scott, because I needed some clarity, try to get some clarity in coaching, because I'd never done coaching before.
Yeah.
But then I realized, like you said, every team is coached and so on. I was all over the place.
Yeah.
I had projects here, projects there, and so on, but I had things that I wanted to do. And Scott was able to help me put that in perspective. Help me. He didn't do it for me. That's the important thing.
Yeah, for sure.
That's really comes out here in the who am I. Scott helps you to bring out who you are to be able to do what you want to do.
Totally.
He's not doing it for you. He's just helping you to bring it out. Now, I would recommend then that you contact a coach. If you can contact Scott, even better, because that's the only coach that I could actually recommend. It's the only coach he's the only coach I ever had, because he's got this unique way. You've got this unique way, Scott, of helping to draw out of people
Yeah.
what it is that they really want to draw out of themselves.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think we all know we have it,
Yeah.
to a degree anyways, but you help to put that abundant spin onto it, if I may use the term,
Yeah, sure.
to be able to see that we have that possibility.
That's
And you've
great,
got
man.
so many tools. You've got tools. He's got checklists and programs that you can go through. Every time that I've come here, he's got a project for me to work on. It helps us, and it all seems to lead down deeper into who we are,
Yep.
digging into finding your purpose, digging into finding what value you give to others, digging into constantly looking at yourself. Where are you? What are you passionate about? What did you dream about when you were a kid and as a teenager and so on? And find that synchronicity to help yourself go and find yourself and go in that direction.
Yeah.
It's really, I can't recommend your service enough, or services like yours enough. Because like you said at the beginning, a coach is able to help us see ourselves from a different perspective.
They are. Yeah.
We're seeing ourselves from the same blinders on all the time, maybe, but you're able to help us look at a different perspective. So, oh, wow,
Yeah.
that's pretty neat.
It's true, man. And I love what you said about how there's something deep inside of us that sometimes just needs to be awakened. Something that just needs to be unlocked. And it's kind of a crude clip, but I don't know if you've ever watched Fight Club. Have you ever watched that movie?
Never watched it.
No? Okay. There's a clip, and for those of you that don't know the movie, it is actually a rather interesting movie. And Brad Pitt was in this movie with Edward Norton. And in one part of it, Brad Pitt went and grabbed this gun out of Edward's backpack. And he said, Edward's like, well, what are you going to do? He's like, come on, man. He's like, what are you going to do? He says, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to show this guy a lesson. He's like, what? What are you doing, man? And he walks into this convenience store and he pulls this guy out of the convenience store, throws him to the ground and puts this gun to this guy's head. And he's screaming and crying. And he's like, what are you doing? What's your name? What are you doing with your life? And he's just like, just got this head. It's like, I don't know. He's like, what did you want to do with your life? Oh, he's crying. You know, he's like, I'm going to shoot you if you don't tell me what you want to do with your life. And he says, I want to be a veterinarian. He's like, why aren't you? He's like, oh, school's hard. He's like, well, is dying hard? And it's, like I said, it's kind of a crude clip, but he said, listen, I'm taking your driver's license. You go out there, and if you haven't gone out there and done that and pursued being a veterinarian within the next couple weeks, I'm going to go kill you. It's like, okay. Our AV guy, Adam's laughing at that one. It's like, Scott, what are you getting at, man? And Edward Norton goes to Brad Pitt and he says, what do you do? What are you doing? Listen, it's like his breakfast tomorrow morning is going to be the best tasting breakfast that he's ever had. Better than you and I've ever had breakfast in the morning. So the point being is that this guy over here literally had a gun to his head, and it turned out that it was even an empty gun, but he thought that he was going to die. So, Steve, here's the question for everybody out there. If you thought that you were going to die and somebody had a gun to your head, Steve, and you weren't living your purpose, and they said the same thing Brad Pitt said to that person, listen, I'm taking your driver's license, you have 2 weeks to go off there and start working towards living your passions, living your purpose, otherwise I'm going to find you and I'm going to kill you, you darn right, you're going to find out how to get into and live your passion, live your dreams, whatever it is. If somebody said, hey, I need you to come up with $2,000 and you got 3 days to do it, and if you didn't have a single penny to your name, you're going to go out and figure out how you're going to come up with that $3,000 because you want to live, right? But usually the problem is that we have so little in life that forces us to get to those places because there's so much luxury. There's so many of these things. There's so many Xbox, so many things to entertain us. We're in an entertainment society. We can just do almost anything that we want. If we can't afford it, we go buy it on credit. Credit cards are racked up. And, you know, we're not happy, but we have stuff. And we have stuff that doesn't make us happy. And we're not living our passions, we're not living our dreams, we're going for the careers or jobs or whatever we can do just to monetize things. We're living within our means, and we're not happy, period. But nobody's ever put a gun to your head either and said, hey, what are you going to do?
Well, see, that has to do with the great pain, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The pain of the consequence. And I think that so many people are caught up in the whole pleasure cycle of seeking the pleasure and not recognizing that the pain is actually where the gain begins.
Yeah.
There's a story similar to that about Socrates. I don't know if you've ever heard it before, where this young guy kept coming to Socrates in the village squares of Athens and asked him, how can I achieve enlightenment? And Socrates was a man of few words. He was more of example than he was of words. And one day he was kind of fed up with this kid, and he was standing beside a fountain. So he grabbed the kid by the scruff of the neck, shoved his head under the water, and held it there. And the kid was squirming and squirming and squirming and squirming. And finally, it was almost not moving anymore. Socrates pulls him up by his hair. He's like, Socrates, why did you do that? Socrates just said, when you want enlightenment as much as you wanted air, you'll be enlightened.
Yeah.
And that's what it is for most of us, isn't it?
Yeah.
We just don't know ourselves enough.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all about this, man. It's all about this, who am I, right?
Yeah.
So see, you know, like you often know that there's something that's off in your life. And you know that you're not living who I am, who I'm meant to be. Like, I'm meant to coach. I know that. I am meant to help people. My passion in life is totally in alignment with helping people just grow, develop, move forward, find out who they are, what matters to them, how to live with abundance and leave a legacy, all that stuff, man. And I'm living it. Like, I get to help people and walk with people every single day. That's what I do.
And you love it, don't you?
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. And that helps me also get through the pit stuff, because some of the marketing stuff isn't that much fun. But, you know, as a self-employed person, you have to market. And some of the ways, the time and stuff.
Nobody knows about you.
Yeah.
If nobody knows about
Exactly.
you. Yeah.
Yeah. So you have your low time because you don't like doing a certain thing, but you know what? You know when you're totally in your sweet spot and you're doing it. And by the way, I'm making money doing it too. So it's monetized doing what you're passionate about. It doesn't have to be, some people are like, oh, okay, well, I can't make money doing what I'm passionate. Darn straights you can. You bet you
Ideally,
can.
you might as well enjoy what you're doing.
Yeah,
Ideally.
totally. People work, what, 80,000 hours? Is that the stat you've heard? I've heard that stat. 80,000 hours in their lifetime. And most people surveyed do not like their jobs. In fact, they hate them. It's like, well, what is that going to do? Like, if you're spending 8 hours a day, most weeks, at your job, and you hate your job, what's that going to do with the rest of your life? Because there's no question you're going to take that job and it's going to have residual for like an hour or two after you get home. Because all you're doing is you're thinking about this, you're thinking about that, you vent a little bit to your wife, that residually carries over into your relationship. You're just like, all I want to do is just watch the hockey game or something else on TV and I'll get over it. Then you're residually carrying that into that. All of a sudden, just like before you know it, it's like 7 o'clock at night and you're starting to do the dinner thing and you're just like, everybody's rushing around. Oh, then it's like 8:30, you know, spend 20 minutes watching TV again. 9 o'clock, got to put the kids to bed, have the whole rat race of that, throw the garbage out in the front yard because it's garbage day. And then you're just like, it's tired. You're just like, man, I just got to get up in the next day and that's life. Right?
So you, Scott, if you won $10 million lotto tomorrow, would you quit your coaching
Not
career?
a chance, man. Not a chance.
You see?
No way.
He likes his job. And you like it so much that you actually create more than you give almost.
Yeah.
It seems like every time I've talked to you, you've got a new value-added product, you might say. You keep on creating. And that's what's part of your success, I think, is you keep on creating valuable tools and help resources for people that help you and it helps them. And I see that tonight you have something also tonight to offer.
Yeah.
That's a free giveaway, and it's called What's it called again? Your wild lion?
Awaken the wild lion within.
Awaken your wild lion within.
Yeah, it's a coaching tool. Yeah.
Can you tell us just a little bit about that?
Well, first of all, I created it today for you. So it's my birthday today, and I was like, you know what, let's do this thing. And if you're watching this as a replay, it's still available. It's going to be on this exact link, abundancecoaching.ca/lion.
Check that out. Scott gives gifts away on his birthday.
Yeah, sure.
So this is a birthday gift from Scott on his birthday. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
But you know what? That's my life. You know, the day that I'm not giving back is the day I might as well just have 6 feet of dirt on top of me. That's the way it should be. You know, like I'm
you
obviously
give and then
giving.
you receive.
Yeah.
That's kind of your approach to this.
No, actually,
No?
I just give, and you know, like abundance happens no matter what. Like that's just my attitude is abundance, and it's not just like, hey, I'm gonna give, and it's like my hope is just like, hey, if I give this over here to this person,
Right.
then I'm gonna get something
You don't have an
back.
expectation, but it just happens.
Yeah, abundance does happen. Like
Right.
it's a godly principle.
Right.
And you know, Jesus Christ came so that we would not have to live, you know, like the thief kills, steals, and divides, right? But we wouldn't have to live in that. He came so we may have life abundantly. And that's just my belief systems. I take that word as the word of what it is. And that's really where abundance coaching, I guess the foundation of it comes from. And this Awakening the Wild Lion Within is essentially a 5-page tool all about helping you awaken the wild lion within you. It's about taking back your roar. It's about taking back just the life that you want to have, that you desire to have. It's about identifying the fact, just like we said, that there's something passionate, there's something that's deep inside of your gut that you want to have, that you want to live with more. I have a series of questions that I think are really powerful at the end of this that you really could just dive into. Because the reality is that we live in a prison, I guess, if you want to just metaphorically think about it. We live in a prison in our inner self in a lot of ways. And I help people imagine that there's this tame lion walking around in this prison. And this tame lion, you know, wants to be wild. Like it was created to be wild. But the more it's tamed and inside the prison, the more it just accepts that its master is just going to give it the meat that it needs, and its master is just going to, you know, tame it even more, and that's just life. But I challenge you to believe that you're not tame. You are meant to be wild. You're born wild. You're wild at heart. And there's something deep and driving and necessary for you to actually do in your life and be courageous about, and to be like the wild lion, the real wild lion that's out there. And this tool will help you do that. This tool will unlock a lot of great things. And of course, at the very end of it, it wouldn't be complete if you actually didn't get an invitation to do coaching. And I am totally fine with just soliciting that, because I think coaching is one of the best things that people could do to advance themselves, to really awaken that wild lion and be in your full potential, live in your full potential. And that's what this program will help you do, is to get the start on that. Right. And then if you want to get coaching after that to help really unlock and release that wild lion so that it can really just flourish and be in its full potential, then you can do that.
And how do you get the free gift? How do you do it?
It's going to be right here on the TV page. And I'm going to put a link right as soon as this episode's done. For the people that are watching live, you can just go open a new window, because there's another video I think that you said we're going to play,
yes.
Right?
Yes.
And you can just go to abundancecoaching.ca/LION, lion. So abundancecoaching.ca/lion.
And there'll be a link, a button there you can push and you get it.
Yeah, if you just go to that web address, you're right there.
Okay.
You bet. Yeah.
Okay. And you have a video along the lines of Awakening Your Lion Within.
Yeah.
And I think we can have a look at it right now.
You bet. Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow Toastmasters, and for anyone who has forgotten who they've been created to be. This message is for you. Today I will show you how you can find the key that will allow you to awaken and release the wild lion that's within you. My 2.5-year-old son loves to go to the zoo. And when we go to the zoo, we get to see the lion. The last time we went to the zoo, I asked my son, Josiah, what does the lion say? And he looked up at me and said, "Roar!"
Hey Josiah, we're gonna go to the zoo. What are we gonna see at the zoo? We're gonna see the lion? Yeah? What does the lion say?
Yeah!
Roar! That's right.
Except for one thing happened this last time we were at the zoo. And it caused me some trouble. Because in the 2 years that I've been to the zoo with my son Josiah, not once have we ever heard the roar of the lion. In fact, the only reason that Josiah even knew that the lion said roar was because I told him so. We need to take back our roar. That lion in the zoo was once a young cub. And as a young cub, it would rumble around with its siblings. It would pounce on its prey. But it grew up and became tame, almost domesticated. That wild lion would never hunt, it would never fight, and it would never roar. So what happened to the inner wild lion that's within us? Society has told us that being wild is not what we want to be. We would rather be comfortable and entertained and nice. Society tells us things about the meaninglessness of trying. We have cliches like nice things happen to those who wait, or life is tough. Society has a way of harnessing us so that we don't awaken the wild lion within. Another thing that happens is that life comes in the way. And it causes us to believe some of the things that happen when we get knocked down. Some of us in this room have had hard lives. There's difficulties, and sometimes life is downright not fair. There's even abuse that happens in life. You may even say to me, Scott, you don't know how hard it's been. Or Scott, you don't know what I've had to go through. And you're right, I'd have to respond, I don't know how hard it's been. And I don't know what you've had to go through. But what I do know is that there's hope, and that there's possibilities, and that there's a key to awakening the wild lion within. Many of us have had a tame lion for so long that we even forget what it can be like to have a wild lion. And in order to tap into that, we need to actually go back to the real wild lion. The wild lion is the king of the jungle. It strikes fear into the hearts of its enemies. It has ferocity. It doesn't wait for the gazelle to pop into its mouth. It goes and hunts for it. It rips it apart and brings it back to its family to eat. The wild lion is bold and it's strong. It doesn't look at the obstacles, it defeats the obstacles. The wild lion is also unified. We know that lions live in prides. And lions choose to live in prides because it knows that it has an integral part of the unity of that pride and the survival of the pride and itself. The wild lion is also courageous. And in a moment, I'm going to ask you to take your courage. But before I go there, you may be wondering, why is Scott so passionate about this wild lion thing? Well, the truth is that I've felt what it's like to be in that cage and feel trapped. I've been at a place where I've felt myself not risking and not having courage. I believed society's lies. I've also been knocked down in life, and I've stayed on the ground for too long maybe, and it's been difficult to get back up. And all these things have contributed to me
not wanting to be in that cage. So I found a key. And this key I want to share with you. In order to do that, I want you to visualize yourself as a tame lion, and I want you to see a cage right now that you're in. Now imagine that you are that tame lion, and you're given everything that you need. You have all your provisions taken care of. You have all of the food that you need. You have medical attention. Except you could never fight, you could never hunt, and you could never roar. Now imagine the inner wild lion that's inside of you. And that inner wild lion that wants to be free and wants to go out and wants to flourish. Imagine the pain that you may actually feel because society has locked you away. Or maybe the pain that you might feel because you feel that life has been really hard and it's kept you stuck. Resonate with that pain with me for a moment. Because it's true, it's real, life is real, there is pain. But recognize that if you stay in pain, you will go from progression downwards, from hoping that something is more, to wishing that something is more, to accepting that this is the way that it is, to never awaken the wild lion within you. So now I ask you all to stand. If you have courage, you'll stand right now. You have a key. There's a key right here. And with this key comes one choice. The choice that you have is to go with me right now and unlock your cage. Go ahead. Push open that cage and step out. Release the wild lion and awaken the wild lion that's within. Now believe for yourself that you were born to be wild. And that there's a wild lion within you that you can take with you everywhere that you go. And it will help you achieve your dreams.
Wasn't that a fabulous video? What do you think of that? About your lion you can awaken? And how does it relate to who are you? I'm going to ask Scott if you have any closing comments on, what does your wild lion have to do with who you are?
Well, it has everything to do with it. So there's a wild lion, just like I was saying in there, that's deep inside of you that wants to come out. It wants to be courageous. It wants to be strong. It wants to be unified. All those things. And until that wild lion comes out, until you are released, or you release yourself from that prison or that cage that I was talking about in the speech, really you're not your truest self. You haven't really just lived. So who am I has to do with you really living, and you really just living your best self, living in your truest potential, living and awakening the wild lion within you. It's so crucial, it's so critical. And in the speech I talk about my son, Josiah, like he knew exactly what the lion said, but when we went to the zoo, he never ever heard the wild lion. I would love for him to hear the roar of a lion. I might have to take him out like on a safari in Africa
Maybe
to do
you'll have
that.
to roar for him.
Yeah. But I want to hear him hear the real lion.
Yeah.
And of course, part of that is just the metaphor of the wild lion, right? Because the lion is, the king. It symbolizes so many different things, right? But inside of you is a wild lion, Steve. And inside of you is a wild lion. And if you know that the wild lion isn't roaring right now, then something's got to change. Something's got to be different. Otherwise, you may find that when you're 60, 70, 80 years old, and when you're capturing your life in the viewfinder that you have, and you're looking back and you're saying, okay, well, this is what I did in my life. There'll be times when you could have said, hey, I could have seized some moments. I could have lived a different destiny. I could have really captured my life and just seized the day and awakened myself. But start today, right? There's no sense having pity, on what you hadn't done in the past or you didn't do in the past. Start today. That's my encouragement for everyone there is, to figure out who you are. You want to awaken that wild lion and release it from that cage. And that is one of the hardest steps that you'll ever do, is flinging that door open and taking that first step out and then really just roaring, rah! You know, just like roaring, that wild lion, right? Yeah. So just getting out there and just letting yourself be free in all of those characteristics that the wild lion means to you.
Isn't this guy great? If you want a little bit more of this wild lion, just go to abundancecoaching.ca, and there's a button there you can push, put in your information, and you'll get some information from this guy. And also, if you want to watch that video again, you can go to abundancecoaching.ca/lion, and there it is. You can watch it. It's a good thing to replay a few times. Thanks for watching Abundance Coaching TV. I hope you enjoyed tonight's session. Abundance Coaching TV is TV that makes a difference.